Okay, thanks for joining us, everybody, for this Q&A session from Aikido at the Leading Edge Masterclass. We have today with us Dan Messisco Sensei, and Sensei is a 6th Dan and an international Aikido seminar instructor. He began his martial journey in 1964, studying Tang Soo Do and also Aikido. And then in the early 70s, he met Mitsugi Saotome Sensei in Japan and traveled back to the United States with him to learn from him. And he's also lived in Boulder, Colorado for a number of years in the 80s, studying with Hiroshi Ikeda Sensei. And Dan Sensei is with us in California today.
Yep, Davis, California.
Davis, California. Yep. How are you doing today, Sensei?
I'm doing good. Yeah, the kids are off to school. My 2 kids are in high school. My wife is at a friend's house, and my dog is sleeping over here next to me. So, and there goes my thing falling on my lap. Okay, so
it's an exciting start to the session already.
Okay, there, I'll put on that little angle there. Yeah. Okay, so and sit up taller. There we go.
So we had a great Q&A. We had a great roundtable World Cafe on Sunday. We had Wendy Palmer Sensei, we had Paul Linden Sensei, we had you, Dan Messisco Sensei, and let's see, who am I leaving out?
Yourself and,
a number of, well, myself and my husband, Don Ellingsworth, and I'm Julie Tolan. And as you can see, I'm stepping in for Miles today. Miles had another arrangement he had to fulfill. So we have some questions that came in from that session. And Dan, if you would like to dive right in. We can
sure.
Start. Okay, so we'll start with...
I disagree with that one. Yeah, I think my... No, go ahead.
Hold your horses. So the first question was from the Facebook comments, and it was from Fiona Kelty. Mm-hmm. And Fiona, I just kind of condensed her question a bit. Actually, she kind of wanted to make some observations, but I made it into a question that I thought was pretty interesting for people. So she says, thank you for all the interesting discussion. I particularly liked the question, why do we always think of taking Aikido off the mat? Why not think of taking what we have learned and are learning in life onto the mat? For full-time Aikido instructors, Aikido is most of their life. But for most students and other teachers who work in other areas, Aikido takes up much less of their time. Depending on your perspective, it may make more sense to take Aikido off the mat or to bring what you're learning in the rest of your life onto the mat. So my question here for you is, in what ways do you think we can bring life onto the Aikido mat?
Well, to start with, a lot of times I'll get students who start Aikido, and later in their life, and they'll always say, oh, I wish I would have started when I was young. And I tell them, I said, it is important that you start when you're young. I mean, you have life experience. Your age, you've done a lot of things that some of these young people haven't. So you're able to take that life experience and put it into your Aikido. It makes it much more rich. So we do, in a sense, bring our outside life into Aikido. A lot of times we think of it as baggage. You bring your baggage into the dojo and you try to work it out in that way. I guess in the standard model, in the same sense you might think of being in a zendo, you got this perfect situation, it's quiet, beautiful place, you're able to sit there and meditate with no distractions. And then you go out into the world and try to bring that peace into the world. And so we don't usually think about taking the hectic things in our life and bringing those into the dojo, except to sort of work them out. But there are things that happen in our life that we can bring into the dojo. I think, being a father twice, raising children, having been in the Vietnam War, those experiences, they changed me. And so those experiences do, as I come into the mat, they affect how I train and the way that I interact with people. So I think there's a lot to be said for bringing our life experience into the dojo. But a lot of times it is baggage, a lot of times it is stuff that we have to work out. So the positive things we can bring in, and they can help our training.
That's great. That's a pretty good broad answer. And maybe we can kind of dissect that a little bit through the call of what specifically are those things. I just wanted to mention that we have Morris on the call, a very adorable dog right now. And Morris, you're in Turkey, I believe. And we also have Chris Johnson and Kelly Bannister. Kelly is usually joining us from Canada. And I don't know where Chris is. Yes, she says hello. And I don't know where Chris is from, but thanks for joining us today, Chris. So if we're talking about bringing the skills from our life, or challenges or skills or things onto the mat, and then also we're talking about bringing Aikido off the mat. And this is all in the context of mastery. Mm-hmm. So creating mastery through Aikido. Another question is from Amber, and she asks, how would you encourage students to take skills they learn in Aikido on the mat and apply them off the mat? So it's kind of the opposite of Fiona's question.
Oh, sure. Well, I think that, what happens on the mat is, I don't think of in terms of, okay, today I really learned how to do a great shihonage because I was able to relax my shoulders more. And then going out there and say, okay, now I'm going to relax my shoulders in life situations. I think the process, the Aikido process, the things that we do in the dojo, we naturally take them out with us. When I finish a seminar, I usually tell everyone at the end, I say, forget everything that you've seen in this class and everything you've learned, because the important things are already embodied in the tissue of your body. It's already there. That's something you really can't take out anymore. You don't have to remember it in your brain. We did this and we did that, or Dan said this, or he said that. The actual experience of the seminar, the experience of the practice is what you're taking out there. So the more I think you're sincere in your practice, the more mindful you are in your practice, that gets embodied and you naturally take it out into your life.
Yeah, I can say
things,
I can say, having attended several seminars that you've put on, that when I start the seminar, I'm definitely in a different place, mind space, than when I leave. Clearly it's different. Mm-hmm. What is changing there? Because I'm not the only one that experiences that.
I think the focus on the Aikido process, a lot of times we go into practice and it's all about us wanting to be, to do certain things, to develop some skills. But when, one of the things I emphasize, as you probably know from my seminars, is that both people are working for the same goal, and it's to create this Aikido body, a body that naturally is non-resistant on both the Uke and the Nage side. So hopefully at the end of a seminar, people sort of have it in them. And when they come out, they look at things a little differently. Again, I don't think it's a mind thing. Things in the mind are always temporary. There's not a whole lot to remember from most seminars. I know some people write down notes and they try to remember these things and stuff like that. But, it's fine. But it really is the experience of the practice that stays with you. And it may just be a few things. Maybe you do relax your shoulders, but you're not aware of it. Okay, I'm relaxing my shoulders. It's just the end result of the seminar. And so you go out and you feel a little more relaxed. You have less road rage, when you're out there driving because of that. So mm-hmm. I think what happens on the mat is what we take out there. And if you look at my website, one of the main things I have there is Aikido is an expression of who we are. And that's exactly what it is. You can't say, well, I'm doing my Aikido or I've got this kind of Aikido. We are the expression of that Aikido practice.
Mm-hmm. I think you've also said we can't Aikido another person.
Right. Yeah. I've been doing Aikido going on 52 years, and there's nobody out, and there's nothing I can do to another person I would call Aikido. I can't walk up and say, oh, I'm going to show you Aikido. In fact, when I demonstrate Aikido if someone comes and says, could you show me some Aikido off the street, I take ukemi for them. I say, put out your wrist, I grab it, and have them move it, and I just take ukemi in a very, non-resistant way to give them a feeling of what it feels like on my side, and they can feel it on their side. But if you go out there and say, grab my wrist, you're asking for trouble.
So this very naturally leads into another question that came in. And by the way, anyone who's on the call, just feel free to raise your hand either through the chat room or just this way. And I'll make sure your question gets asked. But Shelly Pierce from LA wanted to ask, well, she actually wanted to ask everyone on the panel, because she wondered what kind of a variations she might see in the answer, but she wanted to ask what is Aiki that Aikido is an expression of?
You know, you see, if you go on Facebook, you see tons of posts about what Aiki is, and that, you know, this type of practice is a real Aiki, and you can develop Aiki by doing this or by doing that. But, you know, for me, Aiki is, I mean, the actual, it's not something like I have this thing I call Aiki. When you have embodied consciousness, when you have a sense of the whole of I am here, and that is sort of the anchor that holds you in the here and now, then there's a natural, your body moves in a natural Aiki way. There's a whole, we talk about mind, body, and spirit, but the mind is not really a good path for that. I think the mind sort of gets in the way, it's an obstruction to it. I found in my practice that having a good sense of the body and trusting it, the natural intelligence that's in our body, and letting it sort of determine what it needs to do to deal with any kind of conflict, allows this connection to my mind, which is sort of the observer of all that. It sort of takes a back seat to it. So Aiki is another good example. I'm trying to focus here. The idea of extending, you know, of creating ki and sort of putting it out of your body. We have to be really careful that we don't create mind concepts. For example, if you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and you look to the other side and someone says, okay, extend your ki over to the other mountain over there. It's fine, but the problem that goes there, you're probably going to fall off the cliff, because the mind tends to go there and the body kind of follows behind it. But when you're rooted in the body, you feel where you're at, and you can be there at the edge, right where you are, and then look over there and see the other side and project your mind over there, but rooted right where you're standing. So we need the body to anchor ourselves. So without a real good sense of where we are in the here and now, we don't manifest the Aiki. It's not some kind of imaginary thing up in your head. You know, it's more of a organic. You know, we're always full of ki. It's our living substance, the thing that makes us alive. You don't have to create ki, it's there. And to be Aiki means to be in tune with your body, to be in tune with how you are.
So she has kind of like another part of the question that she wonders what is fundamentally the most profound experience first for you of Aiki? She says the moment of energetic opening, of flow, of transmission, fullness, oneness. I think she's asking what, when you know you're experiencing Aiki, how do you know? What is the first feeling or sensation or concept that
I think for me, it's just to recognize that it's always been there. You know, when I call it when I'm in the zone. Sometimes when I'm on the mat, I'm in the zone. And when I'm in the zone, I am aware of the length and breadth and depth of me and who I am. And it fills my body with consciousness. I feel my toes, my earlobes, everything. And it permeates out through there, out through my body. It just permeates out. And that's why I say the mind can sort of say, okay, I'm a large bubble. I'm as big as the universe, but that's all mind stuff. And if someone says, no, you're not, you're a small little nothing, and it shrinks, right? But the conscious feeling of being full, and, you know, everybody experiences, I can say, if you're a runner, if you're any kind of an athlete, you know, when you're really out there and you're at the peak of your energy level, they say you have a pump, you know what I mean? You feel pumped. That just means that you're alive, that your body is aware. The toes are there, the feet are there, every part of your body is alive, just the blood flowing through you. And that's sort of you're filling yourself with ki. You know, the Aiki process is very natural. It's just that the brain tends to take us away from that. I often say that, you know, the baby body, the one we're born with, if you look at it, a little baby, they're just exploding with ki. You can see it in their body, right? They're just these puffy little things, or just, it's everywhere. It's just coming out of them. The whole body is just alive, right? And the human mind tends to subjugate that, you know, and take over, and everything kind of goes right up into here. And then we kind of look at the body. Well, there's the body down there. Yeah, and there's my foot over there, you know. Where's your hand? Oh, here's my hand right here, you know. And we have to sort of recognize it with the brain to realize it's even there. And anybody that's done meditation or some of the stuff that Eckhart Tolle does, of, you know, of finding yourself, of identifying the body you realize you don't have to do that. We always know where we're at. We always know where our hands are, where our feet are, where our chest is, where our head is. And so again, I think when I feel it, when she was saying where I feel it most, is when I have that sense of fullness of being alive.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, that's really nice.
Did I go off on too many tangents there?
No, I was just soaking it in, soaking it in. Let's bring it back to Amber. Has another part to her question, which is she wants to know, did I bring up Amber? Well, anyway, Amber from California, Amber Adams, wants to know what kinds of questions can teachers ask their students, or what kind of things can teachers say to students that can help them to understand Aiki, or help them apply the Aiki skill building process?
Well, when I'm especially teaching beginner students or near beginner students, I try to focus what's happening on the initiation of the technique, not on what's happening to the uke, but what's happening to themselves. So instead of saying, okay, grab the person's elbow, grab their wrist, now turn their center, take their center or step behind them, I focus more on what's happening with them. So I say, raise your arms, turn your body to the right, bend your knees, walk forward, turn on your center, sort of bringing the practice into what's happening in their own body and observing the result that happens to the yogi outside of that. If you start right away doing that, it gets the student out of the mindset that you're applying techniques to people. Applied techniques are not Aikido. Aikido is the resolving of conflict through our own body. So as a nage, you're allowing the uke's energy to come in, but to just sort of move you in a way that's non-resistant. You don't ever lose that whole body feeling. And I've often said that uke creates the technique. And so at the very basic level, it's so difficult because we're expecting somebody to do, a shomanuchi ikkyo, and it all seems that, okay, you do this, and that's what happens to the other person. But if you focus on what's happening inside the nage and how they experience it, it takes their mind away from applying the technique and more to looking into themselves for how these things happen.
So, in other words, if they want to build the skills, then they need to create a mindfulness type practice when they're on the mat?
Yes, mindfulness is the word that I replace martial with. Whenever it says martial art, I call it a mindful art. Because being martial is being mindful. It's not like we think of martial and immediately we think martial, but it's mindful. If you think about any situation that's very martial, it's or a situation where you have to be martial, it's being very mindful what's going on around you. I often use the example that when I was on guard duty in Vietnam, it was very dark. I couldn't see anything. Everybody was sleeping in our patrol. And it was up to me to make sure that, we didn't all get killed. So it's pitch black. And I just sat there aware of the darkness, but my skin was alive. It was a strange feeling. Because of the survival instinct, my skin could feel difference in temperature, differences in pressure. My ears could hear every little sound. I could smell things I've never smelled before. I could smell just everything, the entire jungle. And it became alive. And that was mindfulness at its highest level, which was very martial. So I don't think of Aikido as a martial art, it's a mindful art. And so our practice, when we practice, if we're mindful, there's no way we can make mistakes. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit you. I was swinging my arm and hit you. No, if you're mindful, that won't happen. If you're mindful, you'll never accidentally hurt anyone. It's if you're hurting someone, it's because you're not mindful.
So as far as Amber's question goes, how do you think teachers can use verbal questions or something like how would they use a conceptual communication to convey that sense?
Well, I think, again, stay away from using words that talk about applied technique and work more towards what's going on in each person. Same on the uke side, so often we're not told what uke actually does. But for me, that's the most important part of practice is the uke knowing how to attack in a way that they're being mindful. and they're not just becoming cannon fodder for the nage.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving in with the I guess the intent. The intent, the most important thing for me for the uke is the intent. And I often say that what happens to the uke is as the nage moves in a way that's relevant to their own body and their own movement, uke falls into a pit of their intent. They actually fall into a pit of their intent, and they get caught into this place where they want it to be, but they lose themselves in that emptiness. Mm. So again, for as far as talking about teaching and beginners, just get away from the ideal of saying, push the shoulder here, step to the right of a person, step behind them. Get away from any kind of comparative relationship to your partner and talk more about where you are in relation to everything. Mm. You know, this is what I mean by practicing with an absolute frame of mind, you know, absolute perspective.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. I just want to say, if you do have if anything arises at any time, feel free to raise your hand. I'll make sure that your question gets asked. Dan Sensei, I think that leads pretty well into a question that Miles had for you. Do you want to read the question that was talking about the absolute perspective?
Okay, let's see. I got to find it again here. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, Miles Sensei wrote, I love your idea about having an absolute perspective in Aikido. As for myself, having a Buddhist background, I really resonate with this, and my experience is that it's really difficult to get Aikido deeply without this perspective. Could you say more about the absolute perspective in Aikido? Why do you feel it's so important, and what is Aikido without it? Okay, so you have to understand what an absolute perspective is, you have to understand what a relative perspective is. And most of the time when we're in everyday practice, and you know, I practiced this way for years, you're practicing with a partner. And that's a relative relationship. Okay, there's myself, uke, and nage relationship. And so in your practice, you're thinking, okay, I want to move to the right of uke as he attacks, or I want to move to the left, or I want to move behind them. And there's this constant interaction with what's going on out there. I want to blend with them. I want to harmonize with them. Well, these are all really great principles. And like I said, in most practice, it can be developed to a very high level. To harmonize with your partner is like a beautiful dance. But it really, at some point, it doesn't step into the other paradigm of the absolute perspective. Now, the way I practice is that I stand in the center all the time. So right now, I could say with a relative perspective that I'm sitting on this sofa and this iPad's in front of me. Well, that's a relative perspective, my relationship to things around me. An absolute perspective is I'm sitting here in the middle of everything. The sofa has come up to meet my butt, and the iPad is in front of me. I'm not in front of it. And when I stand on the mat, I don't stand on the mat. The mat has come up to kiss my feet. I'm not standing on the earth. I'm in space, and the earth is touching the bottom of my feet. So I feel my feet more than I do the mat. This frees me from being stuck on the mat or having to move across the mat. When I'm involved in a Aikido interaction, I'm in the center. They walk into that center field of mine, and wherever I move, I take that center with me. So I don't go to places relative to the uke. I go to a place relative to where I am now, and I move that and take the now with me. So everything always ends up outside of me. And when you move that way, it takes the duality out of the relationship. And everything that uke throws at you, it all ends up on the outside of your movement. They can't get into that center because you maintain that center. Mm. So an absolute perspective is to have that sense. It's really a way of looking at the world, looking at it differently, so that you always feel, here I am, and it begins here. That's the primary sense of who I am and where I am, is right in this place. And it takes some training to do that, because every day we interact in the relative world. We're so used to it. We're not used to being in this place where you're, I always say, outside the matrix. You know, that's sort of what the absolute world is like. You're outside the matrix. And I think for Sensei, you know, in his awakening, that's what he felt, you know. He often talks about the floating bridge of heaven. Everybody's dissected a million different ways, you know. Okay, what's this? It's between the heaven and earth, and it's the balance of, but you know, for me, it's simply that here I am in the center, and the earth is kissing my feet, you know, and the sky is above me, and everything's around me. And wherever I move, that never changes. And so to maintain that takes an incredible amount of mindfulness. Almost all of my practice is about being mindful, whether I'm uke or nage. I'm always aware if I fall back into that relative relationship, if I start pushing on my uke, if I start leaning on them. When I put my hands out, they're just there. If there's contact made with the uke, it's because they touch me. They walk into that field of influence that surrounds me as I move. And you've experienced practicing with me, and you know what that feels like. There's just a kind of an empty feeling there. And uke really ends up on the ground and doesn't know why. They don't feel like they were thrown. And because there's no throwing to be done.
Yes, I definitely experienced that.
So, it's, I stumbled onto this. I can't say I really stumbled. I guess I feel like I stumbled onto it, but no one taught me it. In my practice, I was always like anyone else looking for, how can I take advantage of the position, balance? How can I create kazushi in the other person? But I would always look at videos of O-sensei, and something looked different. It really disturbed me that when I watched him demonstrating, and I watched all of his students, even at the high level, something was different, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then one day it just sort of hit me, just like that. It was like, oh my God, he looks the same no matter what. If there's a uke there or there's no uke, he looks exactly the same. And I would look at his students or the other people, and if you took away the uke, they were working with an invisible uke. So there was always somebody they were working with. And if you could somehow erase the uke, you could still imagine the uke being there. With O-sensei, you take away the uke, and it's just this little guy walking around and changing his poses in space, and people are just being swept into it. And that's when it dawned on me that there was this he was living in this absolute world. And I started to change my Aikido to try to, to encompass that.
So if we were to bring that into this kind of off the mat perspective, like, for example, if something happens that's beyond your control,
sure.
How does that play in with, I mean, we talked yesterday with Richard Strozzi Heckler, and he was talking about these, like the self, the other, and the sort of universal perspectives that you can have. Is it possible to be able to maintain this absolute perspective all the time, or is it what we should be doing according?
I think with mindfulness it is, because if you think about it, if we're really, O-sensei said Aikido is about changing yourself, not others. And so the focus seems to be not only as a person changing yourself, but also changing your physical reality, the way you moving yourself instead of trying to move others. And as I try to take this myself, as I go into life and I walk out and I maintain it, again, it's all about being mindful. I really have to be mindful of that. I mean, like I said, just sitting here in this position right here, it's very easy for me to feel like I'm sitting on the couch, but I can very quickly shift to floating in space, and the couch is floating underneath me. And so when I experiment with it, like a lot of times, especially when I'm in Japan, there's a crossing in Shibuya where people come from like 6 different directions. And when the light changes, boom, you got this massive human beings coming at you. And I've practiced just dodging through the people, right? That's a relative movement. And then I just go into that place and I start to move. And then as I move, as the crowd is coming towards me like this, instead of shifting around people, I just shift the center. And it's sort of like there's a video game, the video game, the scenery moves around you. Suddenly the people move around me, and it's the weirdest feeling because I feel like I'm on a treadmill going nowhere, and they're all moving around me like this. And when that happens, I found out I'm able to really sense people coming and move to a place where they're not going to be before they get there. And I move through the crowd very easily, but I don't feel like I'm moving through the crowd. It's like I'm going to places where they're not in the here now. And I mean, that's the greatest feeling in the world when I do that. I just love it. I'll go back and I'll do it again. I'll do it again. So it's like I just stay on that corner for like hours just practicing that, And
very interesting. I see we have a question or comment. Morris has his hand up, so
sure.
I think we'll go over to Morris. Morris, you are unmuted.
Hi, Dan. You hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I mean, very interesting subject you're talking about, because I mean, for me, over here, I'm practicing normal standard Aikido, but I'm trying to learn all of these from you guys over the internet, and then I'm trying to go back and trying to see how can I put my, learning what I've hear from you, from everybody else, into my practice. And I've been also practicing like for about a year, some kind of mindfulness meditation that I'm taking a course with Miles, etc. And what I've started to do is, after meditating every morning, I experience a certain feeling in my body with my breathing, a certain relaxation, etc. So I said, why not try to put this being into my body when I practice? And it's very difficult to keep in the beginning, but when I'm able to do it, actually everything works just like you described.
Yes.
Yeah, as if by itself. And as long as I can keep that feeling, that energy inside me, the same feeling that I feel during a good meditation, let's say. And the techniques, I don't even think about them; they just come.
They just have, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to hear your comments.
Yeah.
About this.
Yeah. I think it's not easy. I'm saying, I'm talking from, I've been, practicing this way for quite a few years now, maybe of the 50 years, probably around the last 20, I've been sort of moving towards it. And it's not like all of a sudden I got it. I mean, I was first, people heard this story before, but the first time I was even aware of this was an accident in my Aikido. In 1974, I was in Yamaguchi Sensei's class. And my partner, the attack was Ushido Katatori, 2 hands on the shoulders. And the person who was attacking me was just giving me a hard time. No matter, they would come on, they'd grab and pull back on me, or, they're just trying to, stop me from doing the technique that Yamaguchi Sensei was showing. And I was so, focused on what was going on with the other person there that he had actually, said, in his own way, mumbled for everybody to sit down. Everybody ran to the sides, and I was sort of standing out in the middle, waiting for the guy to attack me by myself, just standing there like an idiot. And people were sort of chuckling, and my friend was laughing. Oh, you look like an idiot out there, Yamaguchi Sensei could have looked at me like, who's this idiot? So when I went back out the second time, I was really conscious of, I sort of had my mind over on Yamaguchi Sensei. I was afraid it would happen again. And then in the middle of where my friend was attacking me, right as he was right in the middle of attack, he went ahead and did his little sit down mumble thing. And I just walked over the side and sat down. And my friend was already in the middle of attacking me. So what happened is he got stuck in my vortex. And whenever I sat down, he was pulled into it, and he was sat down by my movement. He was like stuck in it. He got caught in this kind of field. And a light went off, and I go, oh my God. I just walked over and sat down by myself. He left him out of the picture. And because he was attacking at that exact same time, he got caught. I sort of looked at it and thought, there's something here, and let it slip for the next 10 years, right? But that was the first inkling of what this is that there's a way of moving our body in a very conscious way. Because when I went to sit down, I went to sit down, wholly. There was no trying to pull him with me. And when we practice Aikido, if we move in such a way that's really relevant to our reality, it's a very powerful, attractive force there. It's really, Sensei talks about the attractive force. He says, all I do is stand here and all things come to me. Just things come to me, just the way I am, here at the center of the universe. And that attractive force becomes from that meditative presence that you're talking about. The way that you are, the way that you feel your body. And at that point, what Uke does just sort of rolls off of that. I said Uke creates the techniques. Now, I think the best way to learn this actually is on the Uke side. I really think from the Ukemi, if you learn not to resist or fight the Nage, but initiate intent, and as things change, become a participant in the process. You move in a way that is very mindful, martial, is that you're continuing to go in there, looking for an opening, right? Looking for that moment where you can do kaishawas or whatever. And you're always a part of everything. Every time when someone puts a kodagai on me, I do it to myself at the same time. It's like, please kodagai me so I can do it to myself. And they help me do a kodagai to myself, a nikyo to myself. Whatever they do, I'm in total agreement with. And the only thing that I hold on to is the integrity of my own spirit. My own spirit is that they can't touch that. I can be in any position and I'm still me. I'm still who I am. And so I hold only on to that, and everything else I can have. And so at that point, there's no resistance in the ukemi. That allows Nage to really investigate their movement, right? Investigate their movement and not be all, you know, I'm sitting there with this guy pulling or hanging onto his arm or something like that. And we both become, again, collaborators for a mutual goal of developing the Aiki body. And that's, the practice has to lead to that. It can't be about one, you know, one person is doing it and one person isn't. The Aiki process involves both people, and both people are working on that process as they practice. And the only difference is, if you think of ballroom dancing, you know, the male, the person, the guy is the leader. He initiates the initial kind of movements and the woman follows, but they're basically only doing their own movements. And all that the leader is he's sort of initiating the steps. And so uke is doing that. You initiate this intent and you maintain that intent, but you're both working on your own balance, your own posture. And in my practice, there's no such thing as kazushi. I have no desire to take the other person's balance. It's their balance. I got enough problems with my own balance. Why am I worried about their balance? In fact, all techniques come out of the purity of my own movement. So the way that I move, the more pure it is in relationship to how I am, the more it leaves the space for the other person to sort of lose themselves into. You know, if they have any aggressive thoughts, it falls into this kind of place. And I think that, you know, as a Nage, you're really a spotter for uke's fall from grace. You know, as they attack, they come in, they fall into this place, they lose themselves, and you're a spotter. You allow them space to fall. You allow them spaces to find themselves. You allow them space to free themselves of their aggression. They've got to be able to, if they want to hurt you, they've got to at least get that out of their system. They need to just go. And you're just sitting there as a witness saying, I feel you. I understand you. I've been there. You know, but to cram it down their throat, you know, to put a nikyu on them and just say, take that, or to smash them in the ground and say, that's what you get for attacking me. What's the lesson learned? Nothing. You know, they need to free themselves of that hate, and you need, as a Nage, we're witness to it. I don't know if that covers everything.
Thanks for the reflections, Morris. I want to bring that to another question. This is from Wendy Marsh in Montana. And her question is basically, you have uke and nage, but how do you be sure that, well, she says, how does a dojo train students to, well, let me just read it. How does a dojo train students to collect themselves before training and to not work out their shadow issues on the other students? So basically, how do students know that they're not just practicing not being mindful with each other on the mat? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, people, like I said, people do bring their issues out there, you know. And, you know, I think, and I've said this at seminars I teach too, is that, you know, the best thing that a sensei or senior students can do for all the other students, and newer students in particular, is to take mindful ukemi for them. You know, there's sometimes there's a lack of that. I see at some point a lot of the teachers, they get lazy, or maybe their body's so beat up that they don't want to, you know, take the ukemi, or they like to stop their students and say, that's not the way you do it, let me show you how to do it, and then they take fake ukemi after that. You know, you go out there like as a teacher, as a senior student, and you take very mindful ukemi, giving the beginner or the junior student space to find their technique, find their movements in there, you know. I mean, a lot of times at seminars, I'll take a very beginning student out there and take ukemi for them. And the person might be kind of like clumsy and awkward, but I can still take ukemi for that. You know, as long as I can take ukemi for those clumsy moves, they're fine. Because you can take ukemi for any move. You know, if you start to think that there's techniques that work and there's a certain way to do them, and if you're not doing them right, they don't work, then we're missing the point. It's not about Aikido working. That itself, those two words don't go together. Aikido doesn't work, you know. Aikido is who you are. Aikido is how you are, you know. So what do you mean by working? Okay, this technique doesn't work because you need to do this. No, it's not. It's my job as a UK to take mindful ukemi. That means I'm working on myself as I go into that encounter. I'm putting intent in there, but my body's like, it's very non-resistant. So whatever they want me to do, I do. And I do it with joy. You want me to go here? Thanks. I want to go there. Want me to scratch my back? Oh, yes, I'll do that. You know, Shiona gives me scratching my back. When they bring it behind me, I say, it comes up here, and I say, back there, oh, yeah, that's a nice stretch, you know. And everything they do to me is a stretch, is a change in my posture. So I think if you don't want those issues to be manifested out on the mat out there, as senior students and senseis, you have to go out there and demonstrate to the students, especially on the ukemi side, how you don't get into these issues of, oh, you're doing it wrong. Oh, you know, people are going to copy whatever you do. And if you're out there stopping your students, telling them, don't do it this way, do it this way, this is right, this is wrong, what do you think they're learning? They're sitting, boy, I can't wait till I become a Shodan or Nidan. I can tell people how they're wrong and show them how to do it, you know? And that's what happens, right? You start seeing the Shodans and Nidans stopping the junior students. Well, this is wrong. This is the way to do it. This is how you should do it. And taking pleasure in the fact that they, you know, paid their dues and now they get to tell everybody how to do it. No, you don't tell people how to do it. You tell yourself how to do it. That's what you do. You're always working on yourself. Aikido is about changing yourself, not others. So Sensei's word, changing yourself. If it's not working, you're not working. You're not working. You know, it's not them not working. You change yourself all the time.
That's great. And thanks, Wendy, for that question. She also says, thank you for helping to bring Aikido into the world more deeply and broadly. So that was
Thank you, Wendy.
I see Kelly's hand is up, so I'm going to unmute Kelly's mic. You are unmuted, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi. I'm having to multitask, so I turn my video off because I'm moving around, but couldn't miss this. I was supposed to miss this, but I couldn't miss it because I knew it was going to be too good. So, so thank you, Dan. And just the last response and maybe some previous ones had me thinking a little bit about. I think you said you've been practicing Aikido for 52 years. Did you say that? And so I kind of wonder, like, for somebody who's practiced for as long as you have, is it possible to remember back to those early years? I think I'm maybe 5 years in, I'm first kyu, you know, working up to my Shodan test as part of my Aikido world. It's not the only thing I'm interested in Aikido, obviously. But just thinking about, I get glimpses, and sometimes I can really get and experience a degree of what you describe and what some of the other instructors describe, but I also have a really, long way to go, and I'm good with that. That's good. But I guess my question is it different for those of us who are newer to the art and less skillful, less competent, so that, for example, I think you said, mindful ukemi, and, I loved listening to what you said, and I think I love that in all ways. But I know that there are certain people in my dojo, or in any dojo, that I don't feel competent or skillful enough to be able to give myself over in that way, because I know that I'm not there yet in my ukemi. I want to be, but I'm not. It will take more time. And so I think there's a very real, for me and others I know in this course, because we've talked about it in breakout groups, there's a very real sense of I'm not there yet. Able to play that role in a skillful or competent way and give myself over, because I feel like I'm putting myself at risk of harm. And so there's sort of this reconciliation piece that I have to go through. I almost wrestle with it in a way of trying to clarify, where are my boundaries of what I feel I can give now. I want to give, but I know I have limits right now. And I want to give as much as I can, yet I don't feel, I have put myself at risk a number of times physically, and I've sustained some really significant injuries, which has cost me a pile of time and money in rehabilitating. And I need to learn from that as well. So kind of respecting my own level where I'm at, and also, not losing sight of where I want to go, but there's a gap. And I just wondered, is there a way to speak to that gap for those of us who are there?
Yeah. I feel what you're saying, and I've gone through those things too, dealing with people who I don't want to give myself to because I don't trust them. And in a perfect Aikido world, we would all be working towards, this non-violent non-resistant way of growing together. But somewhere along the line, this word martial got a little bit crazy, and people started ripping arms and stuff like that. Well, you have to learn to take a kemi before you can take these really hard techniques, and there's that whole world of Budo, kick-ass kind of Aikido, the real thing, the Aikido on the street. And unfortunately, we practice in situations like that with people we don't trust. I mean, a Shionage, when I do take a kemi for a Shionage, I come with my legs, my body, and I give everything. I open up my shoulders, and I trust my legs to get around enough if that person's really going to try to rip my arm. I can protect myself. But at the same time, they shouldn't be trying to rip your arm. And the senseis and the senior students should actually be pushing that this is not about ripping arms off, tearing heads off the shoulders. I remember once I was at Humbu Dojo, and I was working with somebody I think they were from Spain. And in the Rimi Nagi, they were coming around and grabbing my head and just ripping it to the shoulder, ripping me off my center, then coming around and rubbing their arm across my face and just almost tearing my cheek off, And I says, hey, take it easy, you got a human being here you're working with. And he goes, no pain, no gain. Give me one of these things like that. And I says, you're obviously too good for me. And I bowed to him. I just walked away, and I wouldn't practice with him. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. Other people would punch him in the face. Other people would give it right back to him. But I don't need to be put into that world. I'm not going to put myself in danger because this person is got some ideal of it in his head about, violence is okay on the mat. So in a dojo, it is difficult. I mean, I'm talking about a situation when I take ukemi for people, I do the technique, nobody gets hurt. And they know that. And so I'll work with people who sort of give their hand like this, when they do Shionagi, and they're all stiff because they're afraid their shoulder's going to be hurt. And little by little, when I get their confidence, they'll start letting go, and then turning it into a stretch, a willing stretch that we're both cooperating. We cooperate. I mean, when I demonstrate this stretch here, any of these stretches, I said, this hand right here is doing most of the work. The hand it does the work and this one assists. This does the work, this one assists. This does the work. So you're always participating when you do your stretches. You do the, I usually teach with, I'm doing the Aikido, so it's hard to do it around there. But, I'm doing it, when I do do the stretch for Sankhya right here, I put the Sankhya on myself and just help a little bit, help it to go more. And so when I actually go in and someone's doing it to me, I'm a participant. I'm putting the Sankhya on myself. Try this next time very slowly with the person and put the Sankhya on yourself, put the Nikyu on yourself as they're doing it. Be a participant, and you find out it goes exactly where it needs to go. But basically you have to trust your partner. And if there's no trust there, how can you have a good practice?
So do you have any advice? Like,
it's ingrained into the Aikido world, I mean, I see some beautiful Aikido out there. I'm not going to mention names, but it's just beautiful, but they're ripping heads off. And what makes it look good is these ukes are so good at not getting their heads ripped off and flying through the air that I give them the credit. I say, wow, look at them. This person's saving their ass, by really flying through the air, not having their head ripped off, and stuff like that. But the technique, if it was done to, anyone else, it would hurt them. It would hurt them. It would twist their neck or they smash into the ground. But they've just established this thing where the ukes are so good that the nage can be allowed to look violent and really martial, So every dojo is different, and every dojo looks at Aikido in a different way. And some people want to do the real thing, the Aiki on the street. And, if you're that mindset, you'll be drawn to that dojo. But if you can get people around you who want to train in the same way and think of every technique as a opening up, allowing for the uke to trust, to give. The more that they can give, the more, the better. I mean, the reason I was drawn to Satomi Sensei in Humbu Dojo is he was one of the few senseis I could attack as hard as I wanted, and I felt safe. I always ended up in a safe place. There was other senseis that were great, but man, they were like ripping my head off, slamming me into the mat. And, I just, I don't want to train with that sensei. I don't want to be a place where they're going to hurt me. And so as a nage, create safe space for your uke by allowing them to fulfill their desire of the attack. Give them room, open up, Don't rip heads off, Arimi Nagi is not doing something across her head. I raise my hand above my own head and I turn my own arm. I move my own body. When I do these things to myself, it doesn't hurt the uke at all because I'm doing it to myself. If I do it to them, there's a chance I'll hurt them. So the techniques are basically, again, moving your own body, and not applying technique to the person. And I've been in that place for you where it feels very unsafe. And I just have a way of getting out of it. I just say, I'm sorry. Or, oh, my shoulder hurts. Or, hey, I'm an old guy, take it easy on me. I give them I got the old guy card, Hey, I'm 71 years old, take it easy on me, come on. And if I'm the Nage and they're like giving me a bunch of, the way I practice, you can't practice if someone doesn't have intent. If they stand there and wait for you to Aikido them, there's nothing I can do. I just sort of stand there and look at them because they're giving me nothing. So my way out of that situation is I usually say, listen, I don't understand this technique very well. Could you show me how to do it? And they get a big smile on their face. Sure, I'll show you how to do it. And I take ukemi for them. And they say, oh, now you try it. Well, could you do a little bit more? And hopefully if I keep it up, eventually they'll change. I'll be able to change partners, and I won't have to deal with a dead uke, But, I've developed my own ways of dealing with this kind of stuff. And it's all about the practice for me. And I don't want to have to be in a situation where I have to apply technique to people, So, but I feel you. I know exactly what you're going through. But, the group that you practice with, maybe you need to have a talk and say, listen, make me feel comfortable. Give me room to trust you when we practice our Aikido.
I think, thank you for that. A little bit of it is, I think, beginners working with beginners as well.
Sure.
Does anything change for you when it's beginners working with beginners? So you just don't have the experience with each other? Like neither.
Again, the senior students should be an example of that. Like when I'm going around teaching a class, I see two people kind of struggling with each other. I'll go up and take ukemi for both of them. And I say, how does that feel? And then maybe I'll do the Nage part and show them how it feels. How does that feel? How does that feel? And that's the way it should feel. You shouldn't feel all this kind of gnarliness in your body. Relax, trust each other. You're always. One of the really good examples I've seen of this was when I was in Takeda Sensei's dojo in Kamakura. At the end of class, everybody would do, he would have you do like 10 or 20 shio-nagis each, and that'd be the end of class, right? And no one wanted to be the last person standing, right? It's kind of embarrassing if you're the last person standing, if you're the last two people out there. And you saw the most beautiful cooperative techniques I've ever seen. Because both Uke and Nage wanted to make sure they did it in the smoothest way, the most efficient way, so they could sit down real quick. And I look at it and I say, that's the way all practice should be, right? Where you really want to work together, you're like a team to see who can sit down first. And it's just beautiful because Uke is moving in a way that makes it easier for Nage. Nage is working in a way that makes it easier for Uke. And you have this beautiful blending and this beautiful cooperative effort that creates the perfect technique. So we have to be the examples. The senior, I even hate to use that word, I just been at it longer, but I need to be an example to students of the way that I practice, the way that I take ukemi, the way that I allow every person I work with to feel good about their Aikido. I'm not just falling for people. I guarantee you, people say, oh, you're just falling. No, I'm not falling. In a sense, I'm very, very dangerous when I take ukemi because I'm totally free. I'm totally free, and I see kaishiwaza all around me because I'm in a cooperative situation. But there's no danger in my heart, there's no evil in my heart, but I'm not falling for anyone. I'm falling for myself.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Appreciate the input and the questions. So what I'm hearing, just a reflection, is that if you're a more beginner person and you want to change the atmosphere and the climate in the dojo, you can change your own, nage waza, because you can. I mean, that's the thing that you have probably the most control over. Sure. And you can start to be mindful of how you take ukemi as well with the people who you.
Sure. And let the nage know to take it easy. That's all. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, listen, slow it down a little bit. Please slow it down, Yeah. And, or you're hurting me. There's nothing wrong with saying that, don't let them hurt you. There's no value in being hurt. There's no macho.
That's another interesting conversation to be had, because you said, oh, I can play the old man card or something like that. But is that something that we want to rely on? like, oh, I'm a woman, so don't.
Yeah, I know.
Joints.
It's just, for me, it's just to, I want to walk off the mat with that person with our arms around each other and say, that was a great practice, wasn't it? That's the ideal thing I'd like to do. Now, there are people out there who need to be kicked off the mat. There are people like that, and there's no excuse for them. And I know I'm not a woman, but I'm sure as being a woman, you get a lot more of that, people telling you what to do all the time. I think Anya wrote a great article about that, about, oh yeah, immediately they want to teach me, the guys do, let me show you how it's done. So that's the whole thing that you guys have to deal with. But that's their problem. Your problem is to maintain who you are and your kind of mindful presence. And they're going to feel that at some point that, hey, this person feels a lot different than they look, they feel there's something there, But, I'm never good at dealing with bullies. The dojos I've been in, there's always been a dojo cho who throws them out of the dojo, because I'm not very good at that. I tend to try to figure out some way to get along with everyone. And it's not always easy, especially if they're a bully or if they're hurting people. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes they're allowed to do that for years. There's people in ASU who for years hurt people, and they were allowed to do it. They were allowed, no one said anything, And especially the DC dojo, there was a couple guys back in the old days, they're not around any longer, but they were hurting people, breaking arms, and everybody thought, wow, these guys are really good. They were like the heroes of the dojo because they were so tough. I don't know.
It's refreshing to hear something different than that, because we do hear that same thing, and especially like my husband is a guy who's not afraid to go into that space and just go into the sistema space where they're punching each other, and see how far they can take it. But and training with you, I can see clearly there's another path, and it doesn't involve injury, and it does lead to this joyful quality.
Let's see, Miles asked another question, but I think it sort of fits into what we've been talking about. He said, you once said that uke cannot resist a technique because they are the creator of the technique and would therefore be resisting themselves. And yet both uke and nage resist regularly in training. And so you must be talking about a special state. And again, it goes back to what I was saying, is that I believe that uke actually is the creator of the technique at the higher levels. I realize at the beginning we got to learn ikkyo, nikkyo, sankhya, and all that. But at some point it should lead to where the energy that's coming at you is what decides the technique and the way that you move your body. So after a while, the techniques manifest out of how you are rather than what you do. And they find nothing there. One of the things that really helps a lot, and I teach this at seminars, is whenever, as an uke, when you make contact with the other person, don't be conscious of their wrist or where you're touching them, but be conscious of your hand. As much as possible, be conscious of your hand when you interact with the other person. Your hand will tell you what to do. It will teach you how to take the ukemi. It's never wrong. It'll always tell you what to do. It'll tell you where to go. Your mind will get in the way. If you grab somebody and say, I got the wrist, and you feel the wrist, you're going to feel a jolt when they move, a jolt in your body. But if you're conscious of your hand and then your whole body, your body will go exactly where it needs to go. It'll actually find the best place to go. And this idea of resistance is somehow resistance, we grow from resistance. Take it outside of what I believe Aikido is and take it into another realm where, okay, someone's really got a hold of you and you can't move. Is there a way to do? Well, there's people out there who are really good at showing how to send energy into them. Prime example is Aikido Sensei. You can grab him as strong as you want, and he'll send these little beams of energy into you, and your whole structure will collapse, and then he'll be able to throw you. So there's places for that kind of training. I don't. My particular direction Aikido is more about non-resistance on both uke and nage, and showing that a non-resistant uke is actually the most martial, the most mindful, is the most dangerous in a sense. Being stiff is not a very martial thing. It's sort of locking yourself up. But we do meet people like that who just sort of lock you up, And another thing, a principle that I teach is that nage should always have an uke frame of mind. So you don't go into put your hand out there and get ready to do a technique. When I raise my hand in front of me and someone grabs onto it, I'm already getting ready to take ukemi form in my mind and body. And as I start to take that ukemi for them, it's in that ukemi that I find kaishiwaza, and the technique comes out of it. But I never try to start a technique from the moment of touch. I'm always taking the ukemi, because you can't resist an uke, right? They can resist a nage, they can't resist an uke, because I'm willing to go with whatever they attack me with. Mm-hmm. And it can go from a very big kind of a beginning of taking the ukemi to a kaishiwaza, to a very subtle, as soon as they touch you, there's a sense of receiving and then a reversal of that energy. But, you know, that kind of study really requires that both uke and nage are after the same goal, that you're both are trying to develop the aiki body, that you have a greater goal than the technique itself, or the, you know, somehow winning over this thing, getting the advantage over your partner and throwing them. It's more about both people developing the aiki body, the aiki presence. You know, I often say that Aikido is the process of aikification, right? To become aikified. And aikified means a non-resistant body. And there are many arts. So I think one of the things that's beautiful about Sistema, at least one point, is that non-resistant body that they have, you know, where they just, whatever happens, they go with it. You know, there's something to be said for that, you know, understanding how to just give in to anything, to give in. And, you know, I just, for me, I feel like I'm swimming upstream, you know, and I'm in, you know, in my later years right now. I'm 71. I don't know how long I've got on this earth. And if I could contribute any way to, you know, the Aiki world, I would like to do it on the uke side, is to encourage the uke to understand what they need to do. That your job is not to go out there and fight and struggle and challenge the technique, but it's to develop your own sense of what it means to be an uke, how to develop the Aiki body as you're taking ukemi. And when you get that, when you take that out of the practice, that resistance and that fighting and, you know, you got to throw me kind of thing, both people start to grow. There's just this mutual growth, because you've taken the part out there that's misunderstood. You know, you're only doing Aikido when you're a nage. And when you're an uke, you're the other guy, you're the bad guy, you know, who's not doing Aikido. Both people are doing Aikido.
That seems like a pretty good place to stop. I don't think I have any more questions over here. Did you have any more questions? So I'll just toss it back to Dan Sensei for any last thoughts. Okay.
You know, it's odd for me to sit here and talk about Aikido, because, you know, Julie knows that everything I say comes out when I'm on the mat and I'm showing it. So I'm demonstrating what I'm talking about, you know, and it's hard to sort of separate the two, because it's just words. You know, it's easy to be a talking head, you know. I know how many times I've met people who just wrote beautiful things about Aikido. I've heard story, and then I put my hands out and I go, where's that, you know, where's all that anger coming from? Where's all that fear coming from? You know, this is what they were talking about. So, you know, for me, it's odd to be sitting here and just talking about something. I'm usually out there on the mat moving around and demonstrating it, you know, and you can see a living example of what's going on, you know. So, but, you know, I've got videos out there to sort of help sometime. I mean, people can see the videos I have online and stuff like that on my website. But, you know, it's the whole experience of being on the mat, and the words sort of come out of the practice. I don't have them in my head. They sort of manifest out of the practice. And
so what's the name of your website?
Oh, it's danmessisco.com.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah. Or, you know, if you go online, you just put my name in and all kinds of YouTube stuff. Hopefully, not that shows up, but it does give sort of a more, you know, you can see it gives you an example of what I'm talking about and the way I move and stuff like that. So
great.
But yeah, it's been great. So
thank you very much,
Kelly and Julie, for what you've done. You know, and Chris, everybody. Really great talking to everybody. Hope to see you on the mat someday.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.